The head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, has made yet another propagandistic statement. According to him, NATO and Europe are allegedly preparing to attack Russia's Kaliningrad region and other Russian territories. As Lavrov stated, the goal for which Europe is supposedly preparing for war against Russia is the same as that of Nazi Germany. Lavrov made these statements against the backdrop of Russian drones and fighter jets violating the airspace of NATO countries since the beginning of September. Earlier, NATO allies developed a detailed plan to neutralize Russia's Kaliningrad region, which, thanks to modern weaponry, will be implemented faster than ever before. This was stated in July of this year by NATO Land Forces Commander General Christopher Donahue. This refers to the alliance's plan called the Eastern Flank Deterrence Line. Its main goal is to counter threats from Russia and ensure global deterrence. At that time, Donahue noted that thanks to new capabilities, the alliance's army is able to neutralize the Kaliningrad region from the ground in time frames that previously seemed impossible. And in September, the Lithuanian electricity transmission system operator completely dismantled the power lines connecting Lithuania with the Kaliningrad region. The company announced that after the complete removal of all infrastructure, the owners of the cleared land will be able to use their plots without any restrictions. Let us recall that in February of this year, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia disconnected their power systems from the unified grid with Russia and Belarus and joined the continental European network. US President Donald Trump ordered troops to be sent to the major city of Portland on the west coast of the country, in the state of Oregon. Protests continue there, related to the excessive use of force by the Immigration Service. On his social network, Donald Trump wrote that, at the request of Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, he is instructing Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to deploy all necessary troops to protect, in his words, the war-torn Portland and Immigration Service facilities, which are under siege by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. Trump also added that he authorizes the use of full force if necessary. Recently, Donald Trump also signed an order recognizing Antifa as terrorists. This designation includes movements and individuals whose goal is to fight fascism. After Los Angeles, Washington, and Memphis, Portland will become the fourth city in the United States where the American president has deployed troops. At the same time, Oregon Governor Tina Kotek stated that there is no threat to national security in Portland and that people are safe and calm. Kotek also added that any deployment of troops would be considered an abuse of power and that she is coordinating her actions with the Oregon Attorney General to determine whether any response measures are necessary. Notably, the state of Oregon has consistently voted for Democrats since 1988. Legally, Oregon was the first state in the country to introduce restrictions on the participation of local authorities in federal immigration enforcement. Portland itself takes pride in its status as a sanctuary city for undocumented immigrants. NATO is strengthening its mission in the Baltic Sea. According to Reuters, the alliance is sending an air defense frigate, intelligence and surveillance platforms, as well as additional forces in response to the appearance of unidentified drones in Danish airspace. It is reported that NATO will monitor the situation in the Baltic Sea region even more closely using new multifunctional assets. At the same time, photos have appeared online showing tanks being moved in Estonia toward the Russian border. According to media reports, the photo was taken in the Estonian city of Tartu. Meanwhile, Sweden and Finland have created a new strike brigade on the border with Russia. According to Finnish media, it includes about 5,000 military personnel, and the weapons for the new brigade have already been deployed in Lapland. According to sources, the brigade will also include military personnel from Norway and Denmark. The publication reports that in the event of an armed conflict, the strike brigade will be covered from the air by British Eurofighter and F-35 fighter jets. It should be noted that the alliance is strengthening its security after a series of incidents involving violations of NATO countries' airspace. Initially, about 20 Russian drones entered Polish airspace. Later, in Estonia, a violation of airspace by Russian MiG-31 fighter jets was recorded. And in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, unknown drones are increasingly being spotted over military facilities. For example, on September 27th, drones were recorded flying over the Eland military air base in Norway. Meanwhile, Russia continues to attack peaceful Ukrainian cities. On the night of September 28th, the aggressor country carried out another massive attack on Kyiv and the region, as well as other areas, using nearly 500 attack drones and more than 40 missiles. As a result of the shelling, residential buildings and civilian infrastructure were damaged. According to preliminary data, 4 people were killed in the capital. On Sunday, September 28th, parliamentary elections are being held in Moldova. The outcome may prove decisive for maintaining the country's pro-European course. Voting began at 7 o'clock in the morning. Moldovan citizens are electing 101 deputies who will determine the country's fate for the next 4 years. 14 parties, 4 electoral blocs, and 4 independent candidates are participating in the elections. Before the elections, the majority in parliament belonged to the pro-European Action and Solidarity Party. President Maya Sandu, in her address to the nation, reminded everyone that the country is a parliamentary republic, and therefore the fate of Moldova is at stake. After all, it is the legislative body that will decide whether Moldova joins the European Union or not. She also warned against large-scale attempts by Russia to influence the elections in order to bring so-called friendly forces to power and derail Moldova's European integration. A few days earlier, 74 people were detained in Moldova on charges of preparing mass riots. According to the investigation, they were trained in Serbia under the supervision of Russian special services. This is reported by journalist Michael Naki.
The chief prosecutor for special cases, Victor Fortuna, stated that a group of Moldovans regularly traveled to Serbia where they received special training. Participants were paid €400 each and were trained in tactics for breaking through police cordons.
Naki reminds us that as early as this spring, the Russian authorities developed a plan to interfere in the elections in Moldova. As Bloomberg reports, the goal of the campaign is to remove the Action and Solidarity Party from power, as well as the current president, Maya Sandu. The journalist concludes that Russia is at war with Europe and has been doing so for quite some time.
In Russia, strikes by Russian drones on NATO facilities in Romania and Poland were announced, and responsibility for them was preemptively placed on Ukraine. The corresponding statement was made on her Telegram channel by the official spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, Maria Zakharova. Citing Hungarian media, she claimed that Ukraine is allegedly preparing a provocation with the aim of drawing NATO into a direct war with Russia. According to her, Kyiv's plan is to repair several captured Russian drones, load them with explosives, and launch them at major NATO transport hubs in Poland and Romania. Zakharova claims that as early as September 16th, repaired Russian drones were allegedly brought to the Yavoriv training ground in the Lviv region. Maria Zakharova insists that the mulling journalists write that the reason for these actions is allegedly that the Ukrainian armed forces are suffering a crushing defeat. Zakharova's statement clearly contradicts the realities on the front line. As Israeli historian and publicist Yuval Noah Harari writes in the Financial Times, contrary to the Kremlin's narrative that the Russian army is relentlessly advancing on the front, it is clear that Ukraine is now more likely to be seen as the victor. According to the author, this is indicated by Russia's staggering losses for minimal territorial gains. Russia is also unable to achieve a decisive breakthrough, not only on land. At sea, Ukrainian drones and missiles have driven Russian ships into the most remote accessible bay. And in the sky, Russian aircraft are afraid to even approach the front line. Another telling point highlighted by the author of the publication. In this war, there was only one instance of a foreign army intervening in the fighting, and that was the DPRK, which assisted Russia. Meanwhile, Ukraine, although it received material support from the West, was always forced to fight on its own. Harari points out that in the first months of the war, Ukraine defended itself almost exclusively with its own weapons, because the West was afraid to provide anything more serious than helmets. He is convinced that Ukraine would have achieved a complete military victory as early as 2022 or 2023 if it had immediately received everything it needed, before Russia had adjusted its army and economy for a full-scale war. Crimea is out of fuel. Most gas stations have no gasoline.
The Blarney started at 5 a.m. precisely today, because right now we're all actively taking part in a challenging quest called Find the Gasoline.
At gas stations where there is fuel, there are huge lines. According to reports online, drivers are spending up to 8 hours waiting to fill their tanks.
Griffin, the only gas station where you can actually get fuel. Wow, is that whole line for there, is that a traffic jam?
That's the kind of traffic jam ahead. It's all for Gryphon. All of that, damn, is for Gryphon. That's a traffic jam, you see? Crazy, right?
Prices are rising before our eyes. Locals report that the price for a liter of A95 has reached as high as 160 rubles. Earlier, the head of the temporarily occupied Crimea, Sergei Aksyonov, acknowledged a fuel collapse on the peninsula.
We met issues in fuel supply.
In Moscow and the region, Lukoil has started experiencing local issues. There is no gasoline. It is reported that at a number of its gas stations, Lukoil has banned the sale of gasoline in canisters and the acceptance of fuel cards. In the Khabarovsk region of the Russian Federation, the fuel situation is no better. People are complaining, prices have gone up, the shortage remains, and the quality has worsened. In North Ossetia, the rise in gasoline prices and its shortage is a hot topic among local residents.
I just left the gas station and I'm honestly in shock. I'm just unbelievably shocked. The pump shows the price. It's 71 rubles per liter for 95 octane. What is this? What kind of prices are these? Seriously, what are these outrageous prices?
Meanwhile, the harvest campaign in the Novosibirsk region is under threat of disruption due to a shortage of fuel and lubricants. The Regional Association of Farming Households has appealed to the government with an urgent call for help for farmers. The shortage situation threatens the completion of the harvest. Drones continue to destroy oil refineries in Russia. On September 27th, drones struck an oil pumping station in Chuvashia. The attack was confirmed by local authorities. Earlier, drones struck the Afipsky oil refinery in the Krasnodar region. As a result of the attack, a fire broke out at one of the plant's units.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky instructed the Ukrainian military to respond appropriately if Hungarian reconnaissance drones violate Ukraine's airspace again. The head of state said this in his evening video address.
There was a report from our military regarding, frankly speaking, some very strange events on the border between Ukraine and Hungary. Our military detected drones, and these were reconnaissance drones. I instructed the military to conduct a full investigation, and next time, if such drones appear again, to respond accordingly to defend our state.
He is convinced that Ukrainians are currently the best in Europe at defending against any drones. Separately, the head of state expressed hope that Hungary would heed the call of US President Donald Trump regarding the need to stop purchasing Russian energy resources. As reported by Union, Ukraine's airspace was violated, most likely by Hungarian reconnaissance drones. According to the head of state, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, Oleksandr Syrsky, reported this to him. Preliminary information suggests they could have been conducting reconnaissance regarding the industrial potential in Ukraine's border regions. In this regard, the president instructed to check all available data and to report immediately on each recorded incident. Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó lashed out at Zelensky with accusations following his statement about Hungarian drones. In his post on the social network X, he claimed that the president of Ukraine is supposedly losing his mind and, because of his anti-Hungarian obsession, is starting to see things that aren't really there. Unknown drones were flying over Zakarpattia as early as this summer, and then Raif Bil also reported about this in the region. This was shared on his Telegram channel by communications and drone systems specialist Sergei Flash Beskresnov.
In the summer, my friend Sergei Gerasimyuk detected the activity of unidentified UAVs over Zakarpattia. I had to drop everything and go there with the equipment, then again and again.
In August, Russia carried out a missile strike on a household appliance factory in Mukachevo, Zakarpattia. This was actually quite a rare event, since during the war, Russia has carried out only a small number of strikes on this region. US President Donald Trump told his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky that he is ready to lift the ban on strikes with American weapons on Russian territory. According to the Wall Street Journal, citing a high-ranking American official, Trump said this to Zelensky during a meeting on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. The publication reported that Zelensky asked Trump to give Ukraine more long-range missiles and to allow the use of these weapons to strike targets deep inside Russian territory. Trump replied that he was not opposed to this idea, but according to the publication's source, the head of the White House limited himself to words only and did not make any commitments to lift the ban on such strikes. According to the publication, a Ukrainian delegation will soon travel to the US for negotiations with Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth. Earlier, the publication The Telegraph wrote that during the closed part of a meeting with US President Donald Trump at the UN General Assembly in New York, Volodymyr Zelensky requested Tomahawk missiles. In an interview with Axios, excerpts of which were published the day before, Zelensky said that he had asked Trump for weapons that, in his opinion, would speed up the end of the war, but he refused to specify what kind.
President Trump absolutely knows. I have told him precisely what we truly need. We definitely need it. But that absolutely does not mean we will actually use it. Because if we possess it, I genuinely think it will put significant additional pressure on President Putin.
In response, according to Zelensky, Trump said that he would work on it. Also in this interview, Zelensky said that if Ukraine does receive long-range weapons from the US, Kyiv will use them. When asked by the journalist whether they would be used to strike Moscow, the Ukrainian president replied that Ukrainians are not terrorists. However, people who work in the Kremlin, according to him, should know where the nearest bomb shelters are located.
If they absolutely do not stop the ongoing war, they will certainly need them anyway.
At the end of the summer, it became known that the Pentagon is blocking Ukraine from using long-range weapons to strike deep into Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also reported that Ukrainian-made weapons are being used for strikes on the Russian Federation.